Welcome to a special edition of DEI After 5 with Sasha. New episodes of DEI After 5 drop every Tuesday on YouTube. But tonight, DEI After 5 is live. And now, here's your host, Sasha Thompson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this live DEI After 5. This is a conversation that we've been having throughout the week. So this is part 2 of Walmart. What were you thinking, right? We've been seeing this ice cream. We've been seeing all of these other companies come up with Juneteenth celebration type things, and many of it's been cringeworthy. So tonight we're going to have a great conversation. I want to bring my guest up. We have a couple of guests with us tonight. So Christina Steed, welcome. And Dr. Miranda Carolyn Lynch, welcome. So before we start and dive in, I do want to take just a moment to acknowledge the lives that have been lost and the lives that have been affected over the last couple of weeks. Gun violence has become just a challenge for this country to face and deal with. And so I want to acknowledge that these times are very difficult for many people. And if there is a need for help and support, to please reach out and get help and support. So I wanted to start off by acknowledging that before we dove into our conversation. So going to do this pivot to, okay, Walmart, what were you thinking? So Dr. Miranda, let's start with you. So a couple of days ago, Leon and I had a conversation on the air, and he pinged me and he was like, I know someone that is fired up about this conversation. So talk to us a little bit about kind of some of your initial thoughts when you saw this.
So I've had conversations with people about this as well. And my initial thought was just shocked. And it's not even the ice cream that was the most shocking. It's some of the other things that they've got on the shelf. The party supplies and the T-shirts with the white models. It's just, I don't understand how something like this could get past so many checks for such a large organization.
Yeah.
It baffles me.
Yeah. Christina, I want you to jump in because, you come in from kind of the communications, marketing standpoint. You've seen how some of these businesses operate in this space. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. So my initial reaction wasn't necessarily shock, but it is an opportunity for education. So 2 years ago, we go through this reckoning, racial reckoning, and we get Juneteenth, a holiday that not even a lot of Black people are familiar with and why we celebrate. So now we're having to educate people about the history around Juneteenth, and that a brand would pick it up and think, yes, let this be part of my DE&I, kind of perspective is not shocking. It's definitely something that has happened before, but there's a more critical lens, and more people are looking at this and saying, why would you as a white company go and trademark Juneteenth? Why would you, do we trademark Christmas? Do we trademark Three Kings? Like, what does that look like in terms of the kind of evolution of this work that we're doing around racial reckoning and recognizing moments in time that a lot of us, in terms of the education that we get in this country, don't even know about. So I wasn't shocked because I've been behind the scenes of other similar situations.
Yeah. And I shared, and a couple of people that know me and kind of know my story. My last corporate job was inclusion marketing, right? So I immediately was just like, oh, please, Lord, no. Like, why are you doing this? Because again, to Miranda's point, there should have been several checkpoints along the way to say, okay, no, this isn't acceptable. But what I also know about CPG and that whole industry is, how can we get our products out there? How can we serve different markets? And I'm like, not every market needs to be marketed to this way, right? Or not every holiday needs to be celebrated in this way. And I saw some really great commentary around. Exactly. I'm sorry. Yolanda just put something in the chat. It's exactly what I was about to say, right? They wouldn't trademark the Holocaust.
Right.
Right. Let's put some plates together and say, you know, I'm sorry. There was one of the phrases that I saw in a dollar store napkins that said, it's the freedom for me. What?
So it's a blending of cultural sayings and nuances that are in the zeitgeist now because of Black Twitter. And then you want to think you're the cool mom and cool brand and take that out of context and apply it to a marketing initiative to sell a product. And it's like, no, that's not it. It's giving wrong. Okay. It's giving wrong.
It's giving wrong a lot. Yeah. And then, you know, so one of the things that I noticed, because I think I saw this initially on Saturday, and just me being nosy, I'm like, let me see who's running DEI at Walmart. And the name came up of who was kind of like the chief diversity officer. But then the description was all about how their job was focused on diversity and inclusion for their employees and positioning them as a company that diverse candidates will come to. So the red flag for me was, it's disconnected from marketing. It's disconnected from product. It's disconnected from other parts of the business that, again, to Miranda's point, there would have been some checks and balances in place. And so, yeah, it just kind of reiterated the point for me. And I say it all the time, right? DEI cannot live in HR. It has to be something that's a part of the DNA. And not everyone, if they are from a marginalized community, has a DEI lens. That's the piece that I think is most critical in this, is just because you have a Black or brown person on your team does not mean that they are educated in all of the nuances of diversity and inclusion so that they will have the correct lenses to look at this and say, this can be problematic.
Right.
Yeah. That's exactly right. I mean, I've been looking at these threads on LinkedIn in terms of the conversation, and you have different levels of, well, at least they were trying, or at least they were making an effort. But the folks that are saying this are not coming from, like you said, Sasha, that nuanced understanding where we're taking cultural competency into account when we're doing this work. And then the other side of that is what you point out, the silos within organizations where communications, DE&I, marketing, advertising, social media aren't talking to each other. So, right. I mean, and that's not just Walmart. That's a lot of big brands who have that issue.
Yeah. Miranda, you were going to say something?
I just think that you could also have some very well-intentioned allies that thought, oh, representation, this is great. We're doing the right thing, and not understanding because they don't have the knowledge of what, you know, this is really about. So yeah, just to play devil's advocate, I guess.
Well, no, I mean, I think that's very accurate, in that, again, good intentions, but may not understand the larger impact to the greater community.
Right.
Right. You know, should Juneteenth be celebrated? Yes, absolutely. Is ice cream the way to do that? Let's think about the history of ice cream in the Black community and understand the historical context that for so long, many of them could only get vanilla ice cream at certain times of the year, right? So there's so much more history that's involved with that. Then let's add on this trademark piece where a company wants to trademark the word Juneteenth. And again, doing a little bit of research, this trademark was, they submitted for it in 2021. So it's been over a year. And so this is just now a product. I don't think it's gone through yet. But talk to me a little bit about why that could be problematic.
So from my perspective, when you talk about the history, well, the woman who was actually the champion of getting Juneteenth as a federal holiday is still alive. She is in her 90s. My husband is in media and he just interviewed her for Juneteenth coming up. So this is definitely something that, if we need the history or the background, we can go talk to the person who's been the champion of it. There's a community in Texas that has continued to, tell the history of this. So to be in a position where we're talking about trademarking something and not knowing the context and not even tying back to, the roots of it, it definitely is a problem. And I mean, it borders on cultural appropriation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And let me see if I can say this the right way. It almost feels a little bit like this group that's been in power for a really long time, further exercising control over another group. And that doesn't feel good.
Go ahead, Christina. I saw that.
No, exactly that. It's the power dynamic that we're dealing with, right? It is, this group that, again, 2021, we're taking advantage of cultural moments in time to monetize, something that is not, adopted for that audience from a consumer standpoint. So,
yeah. I think what's interesting too, again, this was sparked by Walmart and Juneteenth. But when we think back, like over the last 2 years, there has been appropriation, for lack of a better term, of several cultural holidays. I was speaking to someone earlier today that was talking about, I believe it was a grocery store somewhere that had a Ramadan display right next to bacon. And it's just things, or I can't remember which company it was, but it was another one where there was fasting that was a part of it. And they talked about like all the food that they wanted to like have discounts and things on. So it's just like there's a lack of cultural knowledge beyond just understanding how to sell to people that we need to keep in mind. Yeah. Thanks, Tiffany. Yeah. So it's like, how do you celebrate without exploiting? And I think that's the balance that a lot of these companies need to really think about, spend that time and deepen their understanding and knowledge of. So I think we have our third guest, Brandon, joining. So I don't know if he's coming in. We'll get him in.
Well, while Brandon is joining, I think one of the things for these companies to keep in mind is that there are outside consultants or outside companies that can be that sounding board that can help them think through how they enter these markets, how they target and reach these multicultural consumers in an authentic, relevant, and respectful way. So, and the point that you were making earlier about people being inside the organization, and while they may identify with that group, they don't always feel empowered to speak up and provide counsel as it relates to those things, because honestly, it's a conflict of interest. In some cases, it's, if I do say something, will that jeopardize the way people see me in the marketplace, the workplace? And again, we want to be having people bring their whole selves to work, but that ain't the case at every company. So that's where that external perspective that can check some of this stuff, it can be really helpful.
Absolutely. I had a conversation with some clients today talking about psychological safety, right? And someone saying, oh, but I have an open door. Yeah, but who's it open to? Right? And when we see someone go through that door, how are you reacting to what they're saying? Right? Because we're like if we see something that we don't want to experience, we're not going to go through that door. So a lot of these companies have to your point, look at third parties that are a bit more impartial, that can speak up, that can say, no, that's not the direction to go, because there's less risk for it to be someone outside than for it to be someone that's inside. Okay, so we're having some technical difficulty with Brandon, but we'll get him on in a sec. But I want to continue down this path because I think that there's so many things that companies can do in this space to do it correctly. All right. So Miranda, I know you said that there were a couple of things that you were thinking of, okay, if they don't do this, what else could they do?
Yeah, well, I just really like this bringing to light that people can be in the space and not feel comfortable speaking out, because I've had students share that with me, that they've been in those positions. So that's a very real thing that happens. And so this third party, I don't know, I think that that's a great suggestion.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because we can scream, we need representation all day long, but if that representation does not feel safe to speak out in that space, then it doesn't matter.
Right. And again, it goes back to not just representation, but is it educated representation in what you need them to be educated in?
Right.
Right. Because, you know, and I'll share this, again, talking to a colleague who said she was interviewing someone, and, you know, they said, talk about something that you're proud of, you know, that you've done lately that you're proud of. And they brought up this Walmart ice cream. And so for me, that was, okay, just because you have a brown face does not mean that you are an expert in this space. And a lot of companies are setting people up in those ways by, okay, we're going to make sure we're going to put you on this team, or we're going to have you run DE&I because you are from this marginalized community. But people, again, just because they're experts in their experience, but not necessarily the larger experience, or not necessarily the nuances of diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? And so I think those are some of the challenges that companies need to push past.
I mean, say it again for the people in the back, because this is what we run up against, right? Like those of us who have been doing this work, who do the research, the data, the insights development, all of the things. And then we bring something that is of substance and aligns with the brand, because the brand also has to have permission, connection, relationship with the audience to be bold and do some of these things, right? So, you know, it can't just be, I've asked, and I used to hear this all the time when I was in my agency days, the client would say, well, I asked my secretary, or I asked, you know, somebody who, you know, of color in their life about something, and they affirmed their recommendation. But it's like, but that's not an expert. That, like you said, that's an expert in their experience, not in this work. And it is a work. It is an expertise, just to be clear.
Absolutely. So welcome Brandon to the conversation. Sorry about that. That's all right. I blame everything on COVID. Blame everything on COVID. So, so we are talking about kind of what companies can do to not fall into these holes that they're falling into. And part of that is in hiring the right people to do the jobs. The second part, I want to, Christina, follow up on something that you just said, was tying it back to the mission of the company, right? And what I immediately thought of when the Walmart ice cream thing came up was, oh, they're trying to be like Ben and Jerry's. Ben and Jerry's brand is about social justice. Like, they have been pushing the envelope in that space for a long time. So when they come up with new flavors, it kind of is in alignment with who they are, right? Still a predominantly white company, or a white company, but again, it's not outside of the scope of who they are. The whole Juneteenth thing for Walmart, I was just like, that's not who you are. The fact that none of the proceeds of that was going to benefit anyone else outside of Walmart was who Walmart was. And so there was an opportunity, and one of the reasons why I'm kind of glad Brandon just kind of came on was there's an opportunity to partner with Black-owned companies that are in the ice cream space, or that could benefit from whatever it was they're doing. Like, there could have been a deeper connection for them trying to connect to the community. And so it was also brought to my attention that the flavor was almost identical to a flavor that they sell in their stores by a Black-owned company, right? So again, there was another level of appropriation that took place, right? You're going to not only trademark Juneteenth but as a flavor, but the flavor was already something that was already being done. So there was additional harm on top of that. So Brandon, I want to bring you into the conversation because as a Black owner of an ice cream goodies shop in the DC area, because frozen custard, yes.
Yep.
Shop in the DC area. What was your reaction when you first saw all the hoo-la-la, brouhaha?
Well, so actually, a friend of mine who has a chocolate shop out in Wisconsin, and she had made a post about it, and I had read something prior to that, but I saw the post, and I was like, it really resonated with me because, I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, Juneteenth is 150 plus years old, and and when you look at it, like you really look at, like, my mom used to always tell me, like, don't always listen to what people say, but base, how they really feel about you by how they treat you. And so when you look at like what Walmart did, for 100, they've been around, what, 40 years, 30 years, and never prior to when it became an official federal holiday, never prior did they ever release anything remotely close to, a Juneteenth special edition, ice cream flavor. And so I looked at that by saying, well, it was just really an opportunity for them to capitalize off of this new federal holiday. There was no real connection to the community. There was no real connection to, what Juneteenth really is and what it's all about. I mean, it was just a really an opportunity. It was a capitalistic opportunity, right? And so, and to your point, like, you sell a Black-owned ice cream brand in your store. To me, that's low-hanging fruit that you could just went to them and said, hey, listen,
Absolutely.
we already distribute you, nationwide or wherever the reach is. Can we partner with you and do a special edition, pint or whatever? And that didn't happen. And what happens is it ultimately erodes at their customer base, right? Like, of the Black-owned brand, it erodes that territory that they've carved out, that nice small segment. And I mean, for me to think that Walmart didn't understand that or realize what they were doing, I would be naive to think that they didn't know that. They knew exactly what they were doing, right? So, I used to have a small shop at this place here in Maryland. I won't say the name, but it was a very similar experience where, it's like you're good enough to occupy the space because no one has really been able to leverage it well. And then I came in and I made it exciting. I had long lines, and it became, a destination. And so, their way of eroding at what I created was by, moving in a non-Black owned brand and literally like right next to me, and taking or attempting to take a piece of the business that I had created. And I was blessed that it didn't work. And those that support me because I have a really great product. But yeah, I just think what Walmart did was really, they knew what they were doing. I mean, if you think for 1 second that they didn't know, I mean, you have all the data in the world. You have the greatest, research agencies out there and marketers and everything else. I mean, there's a reason why they purposefully set up their locations initially in rural areas, right? There's a reason for that. I mean, data says this is why they're doing it. And then they target other, areas of opportunity. That's why you don't see a ton of those in, Walmarts in New York or, in New York City. I mean, you don't, just within the last 5 years, DC, I think, has 2 now.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case. And so, if you think for 1 second that they did this unknowingly, I totally find that, hard to believe.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. I mean, I think one of the posts that I saw also was, in addition to Juneteenth, they had a Pride ice cream. And, someone in my post jokingly said, I hope they don't have a rainbow ice cream for Pride. And I was like, well, here you go. It wasn't rainbow, but, they still had it. And again, the proceeds didn't go back to the LGBTQ plus community. And so it's, to your point, very capitalistic. And how do we make money off of these marginalized communities and celebrations that actually, when you think about it, come from pain? You know, like Juneteenth, the fact that these were the last of the slaves to know that they were free. Yes, there's a celebration in that, but there's also a sordid past or history that needs to be understood in that. The same with Pride, right? There was danger that was connected to that for a very long time. And now some states are still trying to make that very painful. So I think that there's this opportunity for, as you pointed out, a partnership or some way to really invest back into the communities where it is meaningful, right? Where it is, okay, this is where we're trying to show our corporate responsibility. But that's not happening. So, Christina, I know you have to drop in a little bit. So do you want to throw in any last thoughts? Oh, she's already dropped. Okay. That's all right. She has to teach a class. So we wanted to make sure that she was able to do that. So Miranda, I want to hear from you. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm glad that you brought up the fact that this is, that Juneteenth is rooted in, a lot of pain, right? Because I've seen the argument of, well, it's a holiday. Of course, it's going to be commercialized. How come we can't commercialize this if we're going to commercialize Hanukkah and Christmas? And I think the big difference is those are holidays that are full of celebration and happiness. There's not that pain aspect.
Yeah.
In my opinion, but please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm here to learn as well.
Yeah, I mean, so what I guess to chime in quick, I mean, to your point, Miranda, I think that like if you look at most of the Black holidays, right? Let's just say most that we celebrate, most are from a place of discomfort, right? And so, I mean, unfortunately, let's take Martin Luther King Day. I mean, when you really, I mean, do I think that was, so again, it goes back to what I always will say is like, how someone or a nation truly feels is how they truly act over time. And it's not based on an isolated incident, right? So you take, and let's just take George, George Floyd, for example. Like that's always happened. That is America. That's just what it is. I mean, if anyone tries to say that it's not, it is what it is. I mean, the only difference now is that you have Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and it's capturing what Black America has experienced, since the inception of this nation. And when you look at the holidays and just MLK Day, I mean, honestly, I shouldn't say the only reason, but I would say one of the contributing factors in terms of why it became a national holiday was because he was assassinated, right? I mean, prior to that, the FBI, the federal government, the CIA, they had a strong disdain for King.
Oh yeah, he was one of America's most wanted. Like
Yes, yes. I mean, if you take any major Black, I mean, from King, Malcolm X, Carmichael. I mean, the list goes on and on. We were never friends of America, but we were opportunities for America. So when you take a look at like what Walmart is doing, are they really vested in Black America? No, they're championing opportunity for Walmart, right? And so I think that and I didn't get I wasn't part of the original when you guys first started. I apologize for being late, but I mean even when you think about it, if Walmart and the Walton family really cared, right? You mean to tell me you couldn't pop? I mean, with technology now, the Green Book, it was a movie after the Green Book. There's an app called Eat Okra. I mean, the list goes on and on in terms of lists that have been accumulated about Black-owned businesses in America. If Walmart don't have the right people that's working in corporate, their corporate office back in Arkansas, then they need to hire the right people or hire cultural relevant agencies that are extremely versed in, whether it's Black America, Asian America, and so forth. And there's no way you could tell me that Walmart had no idea that, like, hey, there's a Goodies frozen custard and treats in DC. Like,
right.
I mean, you just, if you do a quick Google search, I mean, there are a number of articles and news clips, and I mean, heck, we've been on on the Food Network, so there's no way you couldn't tell me. But that wasn't their objective.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, even to your point, right after I did the post on I can't believe the foolishness with the Juneteenth ice cream. Travel Noir last year did an article on 29, Black owned companies, right? And Goodies was one of them that I posted. And people were like, yes, this is what I want. This is what I will support. And so those are the things that I think we need to start to continue or push companies to do. I was thinking back even for Black History Month when Bath and Body Works did the kente cloth around the candles. They didn't change the scent of the candles. They didn't come up with new candles. They just put a wrap around candles. And that was how they were celebrating Black History Month. And I'm like, how many Black owned candle companies are there or lotion companies are there that they could have partnered with in order to provide access to that market? Right? That's what economic empowerment is about. That's what corporate social responsibility is about. How do you partner with those? And you can do that with the Asian community, as you're saying, the Native American community, the LGBT women. I mean, you can pick a marginalized group, and there are businesses in that group that your company can support and provide that platform to. But to your point, it's all about capitalism and how can we take this share of the market regardless of who we hurt in the process.
Yeah, I mean, real quick, I'll say this. I think that, but if you look at the foundation of America, that's how America was built, right? So, I mean, it was literally, and again, you take 400 years of a nation doing what they've always have done, do you really expect anything different? The only way that's going to ever change is that you have to have the right, quote unquote, gatekeepers, or those that are willing to, to buck the system, right? Like, for lack of a better word. And if you don't, then it's always going to be what it's always going to be. Even when I worked in corporate America before I started Goodies, like, I would be the only Black face in, and I worked on, and I've worked, for Bacardi and, Coors and stuff. And so, like, I would be the only Black person really pleading my case, but I would do it in such a credible and authentic way that it wasn't just I wasn't just a quote unquote yes man. I was like, no, I'm your conscience here. Like, if your goal is to legit make a change or have an impact in the community, I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to hold your hand. We're going to go to the south side of Chicago. You're going to actually see what it looks like, to see, young Black males on the corner at the local bodega or liquor store or whatever. And you'll understand what the need is better than I can ever explain it, because you're going to look at it and you're going to see it. Right. And, like, to be honest with you, you would be surprised. Well, maybe not surprised, but it was all lip service.
Oh, of course.
It was all like, oh yeah, that sounds great, Brandon. We'll do it. And then when it came down to doing it, it was like crickets. And I'm like, all right, so where's my budget? I can't go on the south side of Chicago and be your champion, be your voice, in the community, and then you give me no resources. Conversely, all folks on the south side is looking north side or downtown Chicago, and they're like, wow, they just spent $40,000 on catering, and we're just asking for 4,000 or 10,000, and then I have to go back and say, well, listen, I can give you some free cases, but you gave them 40,000, and the caterer wasn't Black or a person of color. Let's just say a person of color, right, or a minority, and so what I realized was that, like, change has got to be something that you want, right? Not only as a nation, but as a company, right? Like that, you have to have leadership that is absolutely, like, on board,
bought in, invested. Yeah, definitely.
And if you're not, you're gonna have Walmart debaccles.
Yeah.
Right. And I had this conversation earlier with the pastor because I was catering. I had one of the reasons why I was running behind because I had 2 events that I was catering, and so one event I was as I was wrapping up, I had this conversation with this pastor, and we were talking, and we so he was like, because my shop is located in Alexandria, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And well, if you know anything about Alexandria, Virginia, it was a port city. It was at one point, it was the largest slave trade city in the nation. I mean, it has a storied history, right? And I was telling them, I said, and we actually was talking about the Walmart situation. But I said, to be honest with you, nothing will ever happen because they want us to be consumers and not competition.
Oh, yeah.
When you become a partner, you become a partner for that moment, but you become competition down the road.
Amen. Yes.
Does that make
makes absolute sense? Yes. Right. Why am I going to give resources to someone that's going to actually do the right thing
and do it better?
And
do it better. But I can tell you right now, like, and I forget the ice cream brand that is owned by a sister. I can't remember her name right now.
Malicious.
That's it right there. Yeah. And she has some very very unique flavors. Well, I shouldn't say unique. They're unique to the masses,
right.
but very rooted in soul, let's say soul food, right? And and I do like banana pudding shakes and banana pudding pints and and all that kind of stuff as well. And I'm saying to myself, you already have a partner in house. Like,
her stuff was being sold in Walmart.
That's what I'm saying. You have.
Yes.
I mean, like, it's kind of like having. It's like being the assistant coach. The head coach gets fired, and they bring someone else in. Although you're the assistant coach who literally, you're really the head coach, but you don't have the head coach title because you're doing everything, right?
But you know all the plays, the ins and outs.
Yes, you are one who's watching film, who is looking at plays that creating the plays and so forth, and then they say, well, we're going to bring this coach from Nebraska who knows nothing about the Baltimore Ravens, for example, nothing about the DC area, and okay, and you're going to give them this head coach position.
Yeah,
that's basically what they did to her, and not just to her, but even in Baltimore. I mean, you have what are the brothers, Takara brothers, Tahaka brothers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't tell me. It honestly, it's such a to even be having a conversation about it is really sad because like there's enough opportunities out there to where like this shouldn't be happening.
Yeah, Miranda, you're in the classroom, you're talking to students, you are seeing it from their perspective, right? And kind of to Brandon's point, we shouldn't be having these conversations, but what are they saying? What are they?
Yes. We haven't discussed the ice cream specifically because it is such a new topic, but we heard so many companies be so loud about their support of DEI and representation, et cetera, after the murder of George Floyd. And the Castell report came out and said, no, the numbers are actually going the opposite way. And our students are seeing this in their lives, in their workplaces, and they're saying, this is all lip service. Like nobody really cares. So I don't think that they would be shocked by this huge failure by Walmart because what they're thinking and seeing is that nobody really cares. Companies really don't care. So, and that's.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and that's disheartening. That's what I was just like, that's so disheartening. Because when you think about students and you think about, okay, they're getting all this knowledge to build a new future, yet they're just like, these companies aren't changing. So where do we go from here? Right. My background, and I shared, Brandon, before you got on, my last corporate job was inclusion marketing. Right. So this is why this kind of set off all kinds of red flags for me, because I see things from this equitable lens, but then also, okay, who's the target audience? What are you really trying to do? Who are you trying to reach? And if it doesn't sit well with me, like, okay, how do we repurpose this? How do we do that? And so there's this equity lens, or there's this expectation that corporate America is not going to change. So what do we do to ensure that underrepresented voices and businesses are seen, heard, valued, respected outside of corporate America? Like, what can we do?
I mean, you want me to? I mean, I can
go for it.
I mean, so this is what I always. I mean, again, and having this conversation with this pastor, what I will say is this. I mean, I think the let's take something that we all, because I like history, I like old stuff, old cars. I mean, that's just my thing. So, you take the boycott back in, what was it, 68, 65, 68, right? And and you look at like the impact that was made on something as simple as like, we're not going to take the bus until you guys make a change. And there was no violence, right? So, I mean, you take something as simple as like, we're not going to get sticks, rocks, guns, bottles. We're not going to resort to violence. We're just not going to support you financially. Back to my original point where I was saying, or one of my original points where I say, when you're in when you are only a consumer, then you have no power. The only power that you do have is to not become a consumer. Right. And then your voice is powerful. But as long as you're patronizing, like, and saying, well, we'll just accept it. Well, what is the impetus for change? There is none. So if Walmart, I mean, I just read something the other day that they, had like a $40 million loss or something. I'm forgetting now the exact number. But if those, because again, Walmart wants to answer to their shareholders, right? Mm-hmm. So if they start asking in their annual, shareholder meetings, and they're saying like, what happened? Show us the data. And they start showing the data. Well, this store that's in the predominantly Black neighborhood or Latino neighborhood, it was down 30%. Why? So then they go and start doing all the data mining, and they talk to their, data agencies, and they tell them, well, this is the reason why, or here's a synopsis of why. Well, how do we change? Well, you got to do more than just put together a Juneteenth package of ice cream. You got to reinvest in the community, right? I mean, that's how you become powerful. I mean, you don't just become powerful by continuing to consume what is given to you when you're being mistreated. That's how.
Yeah.
That's the only way. I don't care what. Let me just be real honest with you. You can go take to social media and every, news media outlet possible that's willing to listen to your story. But the only way that you're ever going to make a significant now, if it wasn't in a capitalistic society, it'd be a different. I would recommend something different. But because that's all America cares about, the only way you're going to ever make a change is that. Take for example the NRA. Look how powerful they are. But guess what they
got money.
There you go. So we already know.
Yeah.
You pull the purse strings, you control a lot. And Black Americans have, our buying power is over $1 trillion.
And I was just looking at the comments, and Tiffany said, that's why there's so many people that are gone into entrepreneurship, right? Where we have to stop supporting these kind of big businesses and go back to this. How do we support the mom and pop shops? How do we, that actually Walmart pushed out, right? There were so many people that lost their companies, their businesses when Walmart came into their small towns. And so now there's this resurgence of how do you support small businesses? How do you support like the 29 plus, Black ice cream shops, right? Or that are owned, or frozen custard shops that are owned in the United States. How do you support some of these other businesses that that money is going back into the community? And so it's the power of the dollar. It really is. Where do you want to put and invest your money and force companies to do the same? Yeah.
Real quick, I want to say this. I got a lot to say, but I'm a talker too. My customers, hey, no, listen. My customers tell me, they're like, "Man, Brandon, you like to talk." Yeah, I like to talk. I have a lot on my mind. I like to talk. I love people. No, I'm serious. I mean, at least I'm being honest with you guys. So I mean, honestly, even if you everybody talks about gentrification. Really, if you think about that, everybody thinks gentrification is like is a class or a ethnic thing. It's not. It's a monetary thing, right?
Oh yeah.
that's at the base of it. That's what it boils down to. It's like those who have money and they use it, their influence, the dollar, to redevelop a neighborhood and add infrastructure that had been lacking. And that is absolutely the same when it comes to this situation with Walmart.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no different. I mean, it really is no different. I mean, and I think if people really, paid attention to that, they'd be like, man, this is their blueprint. This is their playbook. This is what
It's
they're
the
doing.
American way.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's the
It's the American way.
Right.
Miranda, thoughts?
Yeah, obviously this is frustrating. This is, we're angry, but I have to share with you that I'm very optimistic about the future because I have the honor of being around young people, for a living. And this generation that I'm seeing, they're communicating to me that they place values over money, right? And so as they finally get into these decision-making roles, I am very confident that they're going to continue to place values over money.
I'm glad I'm happy you said that because it just triggered for me. One of the biggest conversations I'm having with folks right now is generational diversity in the workplace, because what is happening is that very capitalistic mindset that a lot of older generations have kind of grown up in, and that's been the business, are really being challenged by some of these younger generations that are thinking more globally, thinking more, thinking about inclusion, thinking about diversity, thinking about equity in different ways. And so there's this rub that's happening right now in corporate spaces where they're really being challenged. And the number of new folks coming in are starting to outpace those that are starting to retire. And so corporations need to figure out, okay, how do we shift? Because this demographic is going to make the changes happen. But I think to Brandon's point, it's going to take a while because those older generations are holding on to that power and they have the finances to do it. And so how do we, again, start to balance that? And it's the word that comes up for me is accountability. Like, how do you hold folks accountable? And it's with your dollars.
Absolutely. That's the only way. I mean, there's no other way. I mean, and that's my great nieces in the background. If you see them calling,
like I'm seeing kids cry.
Yeah. So listen. So even I'm gonna just say this. Miranda, to your point. For me, I am. For me, entrepreneurship is everything. So in me, I try to instill in my great. I have 3 great nieces. They're 4, 6, and 8. And so even for me, I don't tell them, that you should go and get a job. I tell them, so like my building in Old Town, I own it. I tell them all the time, I say, you have 3 options. And this is a positive affirmation daily. And I tell them, I say, what are your 3 options with the building is affectionately known as the Ice House. I say, well, what are the 3 things you could do with the Ice House? And they tell me, they say, well, Uncle Brandon, we can continue to grow goodies. We can start our own business, or we can lease it. I said, but what can't you not do? And they said, well, we can never sell it. I said, okay. I do that because for me, it's absolutely imperative that they understand that entrepreneurship, that most Black kids don't have very many options. Okay. Like if you're not getting a scholarship in athletics, if you're not rapping or, singing, then your options are limited. What I tell my nieces is that's not an option. Your option is you're going to start a business and you're going to run a business, or you're going to continue to grow goodies. You guys are going to take goodies to a level that I can never take it. It's 3 of you guys, 1 of me. I want one of you guys to be, become an attorney, one to become a marketer. I want one to become an accountant. And the 3 of you guys together are going to take goodies to a place that I never could, or your own business to a place that I never could, but you already have a good platform. So I think, for me, my approach has never really been working for somebody. It was a means to an end. It was like I went and got my degrees, but long before I ever got my degrees, I always had an entrepreneur spirit. And so the me working in corporate America for the many years that I did, it was only for me to fine tune my skill set to run my own business.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I teach them. So I tell folks all the time, like when they ask me about what my succession plan, I said, well, I got 3 great nieces. That's them right there. But it's important, but I have to teach them the foundation is everything, right? That's, so I was cut from a cloth where like, a job is a secondary option. You create, because you're never going to fire yourself as a entrepreneur.
I always say I'm the best boss I've ever had.
Come on now, say it again. You can say that 2 times.
I'm the best boss I've ever had. But no, Miranda, also, I want to kind of wrap up because I'm looking at the time too. Like, what are some things that not just companies, but like even your students, as they're thinking about where they want to go, what can they, kind of like what Brandon said, like those affirmations, what do they need to kind of take with them as they go out and they want to see companies do the right thing when it comes to this type of work?
Well, I think they're already, speaking with their dollars. They're making informed decisions when they're purchasing things, right? They're making informed decisions when they're applying to jobs. And when they get into these jobs and feel that they are not valued or that the company does not align with their values, they're leaving, right? This is a generation that is not afraid to up and leave and go somewhere else, right? Mm-hmm. There's no longer this like loyalty to get that 50-year company watch, right? So if companies are not doing the right thing, they're going to pay for it in not only loss of consumers, but in loss of labor.
Absolutely. And I think that's, where mistakes like this, and I'm calling it a mistake, mistakes like this go far beyond what we saw in the pictures, right? What we saw in the stores. It should speak to, okay, is this a company that I want to work for? Is this a company where I want to spend my money? And do the values align with who I am, right? If any of that is in misalignment, then that company is going to lose money. And so this is the shift that needs to start happening. And again, to your points, the points earlier and Christina made was there are people out here that do this for a living that can help you not make these mistakes, that can help you kind of get past some of the decision making. So again, to your point, Miranda, it's going through some type of process where someone is going to see and say no, right? So that's, I think, a big part of this. The second thing I think I want to kind of finalize is kind of going back onto Brandon's point is supporting the businesses within the community. And supporting those that want to do good for the community, right? If we can always give our dollars to the Walmarts, to the Targets, what have you, and line the pockets of other people that really don't care about us, or give your money to folks that genuinely care, genuinely want to be invested and want to be successful. We want to see them successful, right? And so that's how you continue. That's how we, continue to push the 29 or plus, ice cream and frozen treats shops. Custards. Thank you. Words lost me for a second. Frozen custard shops, out there, or the candles or body works or whatever it is, right? Support those types of communities and businesses that support Black and brown communities, the LGBTQ plus community, women, right? We haven't even talked about like Native American communities, businesses owned by people with disabilities. There's so many that are out there that are underseen, undervalued, undersupported, that we can give our dollars to, so that we don't have to deal with the foolishness of having to fight the big corporations for ice cream that we didn't even want.
Yeah, and real quick, I want to say this. I'm curious who they even partnered with to produce. They
didn't.
So they did all that in-house? Yeah,
think about, even if, let's pretend that Walmart does not care about corporate social responsibility for a minute. Even if they did not care about doing the right thing, think about how much better this would have turned out for them and their bottom line. Because now they've got a product that they can't sell. They're going to have to eat the cost of that. They've got all the backlash. They've got the people that are going to genuinely boycott them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even if you were going to miss out on some of the profits, partnering with the one that they already have, the Creamalicious,
yeah,
would have benefited them in so many more ways, right?
Absolutely.
And then on top of that, you get to do the right thing.
Yeah.
Yep. Or if they want to take it a step further, they could have, I mean, from a localized standpoint, I mean, yeah, in the DMV, right? Because that's DC, Maryland, Virginia. In the DMV, I mean, you know, you have Walmarts every 10 miles roughly, right? I'm exaggerating, but I'm just, you know, for conversation. I mean, imagine the impact they would have had they partnered up in Baltimore with Takara Brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, if I look at it like this, if a small Black-owned brand can be sustainable on their own, okay, I've been in business for 10 years, so a decade. If I can sustain without Walmart support for 10 years, imagine what that partnership would have done for me.
That platform, exactly.
Like if people think that like Shark Tank would have taken me over the top, no, like it would have been beneficial. But imagine, you know, a regional rollout campaign saying, "Hey, we're partnering with Goodies Frozen Custard. They're making this limited edition red velvet pineapple upside down cake custard, whatever." Right? It's only for the month of June, and once we're done, we're done. And so it would have been a cross promotion between Walmart, DMV, and or Mid Atlantic, whatever, and Goodies. So both of our collective platforms, it would have gave them credibility because they're like, oh, we know Brandon. Mm-hmm. We see Brandon driving his truck GG all throughout the DMV. We can go to the Ice House. We know Brandon. We know Brandon is a good dude. So we're going to support off on the strength of Brandon, not on the strength of Walmart.
Right. But I mean, think about it. Target did that, right, for Black History Month, and they partnered with so many Black creatives during that time. And it wasn't just to say, okay, here's the designs. One of my schoolmates, her sons have a candle company, right? Mm-hmm. that they had on the shelves, right? Happy Danny was on the shelves, but they continued the partnership after Black History Month. Mm-hmm. Right. So not only did they give those creatives the opportunity and the platform that you're talking about, because these folks had a platform, but I mean, it just expanded it now nationwide. They're continuing that partnership afterward. And I think that's the piece where the Walmarts miss out, because now I am going to Target to go get this candle. And yes, Target's going to make some money off of that, but so is, you know, these three boys, right? Or Danny and her stationery. So I think there's opportunities to think about this way beyond what they're doing.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, take a look at Ralph Lauren. I mean, he just released the HB. They just released the HBCU
Morehouse in Spelman. Yep.
HBCU, you know, line, right? The designer was a young, you know, a young brother.
Yeah.
Right. And so my whole thing is like, hey, like, I don't think anyone has an issue with, you know, like, capitalism when it's balanced, right? When there's an equitable stake for those that need to have a benefit from it. But when it's a selfish opportunity, then that's where you're going to get this conversation that we're having today.
Well, and that's when it goes into exploitation.
Yeah. Well said. Yep.
That's when you're starting to exploit the community versus celebrate the community. And I think that's the difference.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's the difference.
Absolutely.
All right. So I am being mindful of our time. We are at the hour mark. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Christina. I know she's teaching right now, for this conversation. This has been phenomenal. I hope folks were able to kind of walk away with a couple of things to think about, or things that you could challenge your organizations with as they're thinking about creating celebrations and making sure that they're meaningful and not exploiting culture. So again, this is DEI After 5 live. So thank you for joining us. You can find us every Tuesday on YouTube or your favorite podcast for our regular DEI After 5 show. And thank you again for being here with us. And we will see you next time. Have a good one.
And follow on Instagram at @goodies.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Before I go. Yes. Thank you. How can people find you? Yes. Thank you for that.
So for those that are in the DMV, you can find me. I'm on all social media platforms: TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. My handle is at goodies with 3 M's, and that's GOODIES.
Thank you. And Miranda, how can folks connect with you?
Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn.
All right, wonderful. Thank you all for that reminder. Thank you, guys. We will see you next time. Have a good one.
Great. Thank you. Bye-bye.